Why did Jesus come? Why did Jesus come? Well, that's what we're going to answer from the Gospel of Mark as we continue our study. So come and see. We have a really neat passage. It's going to pick up in Mark chapter 1, verse 29. And forthwith, when they were come out of the synagogue, they entered into the house of Simon and Andrew and James and John. So this picks up right after the dramatic event of the synagogue, where Jesus drives out a demon and teaches in the synagogue. And what Mark wants us to see here is this idea of straight away or immediately. When he starts with forthwith, this is the same term we've already seen several times in Mark chapter 1. Mark wants us to feel the urgency, the purpose of Jesus' action. He's not just kind of wandering through. He is doing things specifically, intentionally. And specifically, intentionally, he goes to the house of Simon and Andrew and James and John. A lot like today, after a synagogue service or a church service, people would gather for a big meal frequently. Probably that's what's happening here. And when Jesus goes into the house, though, he finds that all is not well. Picking up in verse 30, Simon's mother lay sick with a fever. And anon or right away, they tell him of her. And he comes, and look at what he does. He lifts her or took her by the hand and lifted or raised her up. Apparently Simon Peter was married. 1 Corinthians 9:5 suggests this, actually states it, and it suggests that even his wife helped out in their ministry services together. And there's an old tradition that Simon Peter's wife was actually martyred before he was, but we have no way of verifying this. That I want you to see here is Jesus' response to this sick woman, Simon Peter's mother-in-law. He lifts her up by the hand and cures her. He raises her. Jesus is a God of compassion. Mark points this out in many ways. And Jesus doesn't perform a distant miracle. He could speak cure. He could speak healing. He could speak healing from 100 miles away, and she would be just as healed. But he physically reaches out and touches her. He reaches out to the suffering. And people respond to this. Even when the sun did set, they brought into them all that were diseased and possessed of devils. The Sabbath day ended when the sun set on Saturday. And theoretically, carrying an ill person to Jesus or leading a demonic to Jesus might be considered work that profanes the Sabbath. Really, it's not. And Jesus, we'll see later, is deeply grieved by that kind of legalism. But in any event, people are concerned about that sort of thing. So they wait till the sun goes down to make sure everything is kosher. And he casts out many devils and suffers not the devils to speak because they knew him. Now, I want you to think about your family on Sunday. What is assuming you go to church. So you go to church, you do church stuff. Let's say you're even ministering. You're actively serving in the church like Jesus taught in the synagogue. And you do all these things. And then you go and you think you're going to go have lunch. But actually, it turns out that somebody needs help. Somebody needs serious help. And so rather than having a normal lunch, you help that person. And then they serve lunch. And you still have lunch. And then people start showing up at your house. People with all kinds of problems, all kinds of drama, all kinds of issues, all kinds of diseases, all kinds of devils. They start showing up at your house. What would your response be? How would you want to respond in the flesh, in our brokenness? And look at how Jesus responds. Jesus probably didn't get a nap on this Sunday, or not really Sunday, but Jesus probably did not get a nap on this Sabbath day. We don't know, but probably not. He was busy serving. He served and he served and he served and cast out many devils. Now I want you to notice something else he does in verse 34. He suffered not the devils to speak because they knew him. Sumatran coffee today. It's good. Decaf, Swiss water process, if you're interested. This is a good opportunity for us to talk about why Jesus doesn't allow the devils to speak. We talked about it a little bit last time, and I mentioned a reason. Jesus knows, he understands that the kingdom of lies is going to try to hijack the gospel message. You can see an example of that specific thing happening in Paul's reaction in Acts 16 through 18. And Satan is still working to do that, right? Cults and heresies proliferate. All kinds of people are trying to hijack the gospel message, and Jesus doesn't want that. So that's one reason he doesn't allow the demons to confess him, even though what the demons are saying is technically true. Now I want you to think about another reason, and a reason that's highlighted here in the phrase, because they knew him. This means that they knew him to be the Son of God, the Messianic King. And Jesus is carefully orchestrating all these events leading up to something nobody expects: the death, burial, and resurrection of the Messianic King. You see, the popular expectation in Israel was that the Messiah would lead an immediate rebellion against the Romans, that his coming would be a primarily political event, that he would save Israel. And if this political event happened when people expected it, then Jesus' larger plan of redemption would be derailed. Jesus had to die like a sinner and a slave to save us, sinners and slaves to sin, before he could reign as the King of righteousness. And nobody understands this. Nobody gets this. And this is the other reason that Jesus often commands his disciples and even the demons to keep his identity to themselves until he is ready to reveal it. Now, when I'm giving you these reasons and these thoughts here about why Jesus often commands the disciples and the demons to keep his messianic status a secret for a little while, I want you to understand this is not dogma. There's no chapter and verse. I can't give you a book, chapter, and verse on this one, and lots of good Christians disagree about this. The church has been discussing Jesus' reasons for keeping the messianic message to himself for 2,000 years. And good Christians who know their Bibles very well are going to continue to disagree about it until he returns and we can all ask him. And that's okay. And now we come really to the heart of this passage. In the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there prayed. Okay, so go back to the scenario I was laying out before. You go to church. It's kind of a busy day. You actually have to teach. You have to teach and preach that day at church. So you teach and preach, and then afterwards you deliver somebody from a demon, and then you think you're going to lunch, but actually you have to do another miracle to heal this lady, and then you guys have lunch, and it's a nice afternoon. But then people start showing up. As soon as the sun goes down, people start showing up. And the whole town, the whole village is rallied around your house asking for your help with this problem and that problem and that problem. And finally, after a long day of serving the Lord, you go to bed. And what do you do the next morning? Well, a lot of pastors might sleep in till 11 a.m. In the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there prayed. We see Jesus seeking God in private prayer. In fact, we see it 3 times in the Gospel of Mark, and doubtless he did it a lot more than that. This doesn't mean you have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to be a good Christian. This doesn't mean you have to do devotionals 7 times a day. But see what Jesus does here. He prioritizes. He makes time with God intentional. He deliberately seeks the Lord. Even when it might be physically uncomfortable, he gets alone to do it. Christian, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this today, it's that personal, intentional, undistracted time with God in prayer and in the Word is as vital to you as food and water. You don't have to study the Holy Book 7 hours every day. You don't have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. But make that time private, intentional, undistracted time where you can seek God in the Word and prayer. Follow Jesus in that way. And his disciples get after him. They come and find him when they get up. Simon and they that were with him, that followed after him, in verse 36, when they found him, they said to him, "All men seek for thee." Lots of people want a part of Jesus. That's another reason Jesus makes specific time to be alone with God. And he said to them, "Let us go to the next town, that I may preach there also. For therefore came I forth." Another reason Jesus came, to preach the gospel, the good news of himself. And he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee and cast out devils. So, what do we say to this? How should we live? There are 3 ways that we can see, at least 3, to follow Jesus in this passage. First of all, Jesus has compassion, and he came to show compassion, even when it might have been difficult or tiresome or inconvenient. Go and do thou likewise. Show compassion, Christian. The second reason is that Jesus came to declare the good news of himself that makes people free. Therefore came I forth. Christian, you cannot make people free. I cannot solve your sin problem. You cannot solve your sin problem. Jesus can solve your sin problem. Declare Jesus to yourself, to others. Speak the good news of the gospel. Meditate upon it. Tell others. Go and do thou likewise. And in all this coming, all this doing, Jesus still lived private, intentional, devotional time with the Father. Go and do thou likewise. I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm Pastor Schuyler with Berean Baptist Church. We're doing studies in the Gospel of Mark while I recover from pneumonia. You can learn all about our church in the video information below, or by checking out our website. Please remember to like and share and subscribe if this has been a blessing to you. I look forward to seeing you again in the Gospel of Mark. God bless.